Welcome to the ALCS Roundup of 2020-21. ALCS exists to support and champion and fight for authors. And most important of all, we're a collecting society and we exist to collect fees that individual authors cannot collect and to pay these out twice yearly in our distributions. Last year was challenging with COVID and with lockdown, but thanks to the efforts of our staff and those at the Copyright Licensing Agency, we managed to collect more than £40 million for the first time in our history. And more importantly, we made record payments of more than £38 million to over 95,000 members. We know these payments help authors and help support their writing careers. And when so many are struggling, it was great to be able to help so many of our members. Although our staff worked remotely throughout last year, it was very much business as usual at ALCS, and we've continued to support our members to the highest standards in all areas, even recruiting new staff across our various teams to ensure we give the best service we can.
Our membership has continued to grow with 3,500 new members. 1,788 of these new members were contacted and invited to join ALCS by our membership recruitment team. Making these connections enabled us to release £1.3 million to writers who we had collected money for. If you've been contacted by the membership recruitment team and have benefited from your membership of ALCS, please don't forget to tell your friends and colleagues, as we may be holding money for them too.
New income revenues helped us reach the 40 million figure. Payments were received for audiovisual works for the first time from Russia and Colombia, and a new source of income from Finland means that we now collect from 33 countries worldwide.
We helped launch Authorshare, a scheme where authors receive a share of sales from their books purchased through online second-hand booksellers, World of Books and Book Barn International. This is a scheme very much in its infancy, but one that we hope will expand in the future to include other second-hand book retailers across the world and help reflect the principle of no use without payment.
And we rebalanced our investments this year by moving some monies out of equities and into a new, socially responsible investment fund.
We've continued to develop our website and are now collecting data on the websites and blogs that our members write. We've also developed a tool that suggests works that we think you may have written based on your name, making it as easy as possible for you to let us know what you've written.
Our information system continues to evolve to meet the challenging data environment in which we work in. And £40 million comes with a lot of data. By expertly matching hundreds of files to thousands of lines of data, we've made the complex easy to ensure that each member is paid out accurately for the reuse of their work.
We stayed connected and remained available to our members, some who experienced little human contact during lockdown and began their calls with, "How lovely to reach a real person."
We adapted quickly to a purely virtual world. And while we know our members like meeting us face-to-face by holding our AGM online for the first time, many more of our members were able to be involved. We also held the ALCS Annual Awards, focus groups, and regional meetings with the Society of Authors and ALCS members online to a wider audience.
We launched our Instagram account and hit new milestones on our social media interactions across Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn and YouTube. If you don't already follow us, we'd love for you to do so, as it's a great chance for us to keep you up to date on all things ALCS.
In our podcast Authors Matters and in ALCS News, we've interviewed a variety of writers on the different ways they make a living and on issues important to ALCS members such as public lending right and further financial support for authors.
We want all writers to thrive as a central part of our society. We have continued to support or sponsor a variety of projects that help new writers or disadvantaged sectors of the writing community get established, as well as mentoring schemes and initiatives that provide mental health support for creators.
Copyright is vital to creators. We spread the word about the importance of copyright to students of all ages, as well as writers and the general public through our partnerships and with copyright education resources.
We launched a successful pilot for Reteach, a free resource providing teachers with user-friendly guides covering challenging areas of the curriculum. The resource is designed to help teachers but also maintain the value of the existing educational licences that so many of our members benefit from.
We celebrate the values that writers bring throughout the world, fighting for their rights and giving them a powerful collective voice. In the UK, we've built and maintained relationships in Parliament. And this year we've had the best attended all-party writers group, AGM, that we've ever had. This year we also supported the all-party writers group inquiry into authors' earnings and how writers can be supported during the COVID crisis.
Our ALCS campaigns have led to MPs receiving over 800 emails and letters from members in addition to contact from the advocacy team. Thank you to those of you who took the time to get involved. It really makes a difference.
The International Authors Forum joined the White for Creators initiative at the World Intellectual Property Organization and has also worked on a publishers mentoring scheme in developing countries to ensure the needs of authors are considered in model contracts there.
So it has been a busy year all round at ALCS, and we hope we have made a positive difference to you, our membership. I'd like to finish by thanking all of our ALCS staff for the hard work which enabled us to achieve this record year. I'd also like to thank our board for the guidance they gave throughout a challenging year, and finally to thank you, our members, for your continuing support of ALCS.
Hello, my name's Tony Bradman and I'm Chair of ALCS, and I'm here reviewing the year, and unfortunately, again I'm talking about how it's been another very challenging year in which to be a writer. I am pleased to say, though, that through another extensive lockdown at the beginning of the year, ALCS managed to operate business as usual, something for which we writers are all very grateful. It's been a year that's brought about some positive changes for the organisation too, ones we hope will stick around long after this pandemic has ebbed away into the murky depths of history. Changes that proved in many cases that you don't need to be in the same room in order to remain connected to friends and colleagues. I hosted ALCS's first online AGM this time last year, and that was a daunting prospect because we'd never done it that way before. Although in the end it's felt surprisingly intimate and inclusive. It certainly enabled more people to attend from all corners of the country than ever before. We were able to answer a lot more questions too, all with the added benefit of no one having to worry about train times or parking or even bad weather. So here we are, doing it again this year because it felt like it worked really well and enabled many more people to attend than is normally possible. It was a pity not to have the opportunity for a face-to-face chat and a drink with members afterwards, but we're aiming to do more of that around the country in due course, so watch this space. As part of our international work, ALCS has been involved in the production of the International Authors Forum, Creating a Living series of online events, which have gone even further in terms of reach and have brought together writers from across the globe online. These events included writers and representatives from countries across the world who would otherwise very likely not have been able to attend in person. And somehow, the worldwide pandemic has managed to bring together people in a way that would have seemed impossible before. There's also another word that's impacting us authors right now, and that's Brexit. It's been playing second fiddle for a while to the virus, but it's no less threatening to our potential incomes. ALCS has been working hard over recent months with the Publishers Association, the Society of Authors and other industry representatives to save our books, a campaign which is urging the government not to change how copyright works, a prospect which looks to be being considered. Closer to home, we've also been campaigning to encourage the UK government to consider an increase to the PLR pot as part of their spending review, It hasn't gone up for a very long time. Both campaigns have seen over 800 members writing to their MPs, and we managed to raise the issues with over half of the MPs in Parliament. Your voices and support have really helped us raise these vital issues for writers with parliamentarians. ALCS is at its core a writers' organisation run by writers for writers. I'd like to thank my fellow writers and colleagues on the Board of Directors for all their work in this year in guiding and directing ALCS so astutely. Our commitment to the membership remains the same regardless of the climate we're in. Our team are dedicated to ensuring we collect as much for you as possible, and also in ensuring we get this money to you as efficiently and effectively as possible. We'll continue to work hard on your behalf, whatever the circumstances, and let's hope next year will be even better.
Welcome, and thank you for coming to our 43rd AGM, our second to be held online. I'm joined today by Tony Bradman, our Chair, Barbara Hayes, our Deputy Chief Executive Officer, and Mark Bispan, our Chief Financial Officer. To start the meeting, I will now hand over to Tony, who will begin proceedings.
Thank you very much, Owen. Welcome, everyone. I'll now start the formal proceedings of the AGM. In accordance with the regulations governing the operation of collecting societies, I can confirm that the non-executive members of the ALCS board meet periodically to monitor the performance of the management and to ensure that the policies approved by the members are being implemented. I am pleased to say that there are no issues or concerns regarding these matters to report to the members. Voting today will all be done online through the website you are now logged into. A number of members have already voted on the agenda items, and these will be taken into account in the voting. If you have already voted, you will not be able to vote again. There will be notifications that pop up on your screen when voting for an agenda item is open. If you'd like to ask a question during the course of the meeting, please use the chat icon in the bottom right-hand corner of your browser window, which looks like a speech bubble, and we'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can. And now to begin. The first item of formal business is the Director's Report. I would now like to introduce you to Mark Bispham, our Chief Financial Officer. Mark will present our statutory accounts, and I propose that we take questions on both the Director's Report and accounts after his presentation. Agenda Item 1, to receive and adopt the Board of Directors' Report and accounts for the period 1st of April 2020 to 31st of March 2021. This is proposed by Joan Smith and seconded by Tom Chatfield.
Thank you, Tony. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my role to give you an overview of the financial results of the company for the year to the 31st of March 2021. Hopefully, you already all have had sight of the detail of the Director's Report and accounts that are included in the annual report and available on the ALCS website. So, I intend to just run through a brief summary of the main highlights of the year. Licence income increased by 12.4% to £40.9 million, our best ever year and our 11th in a row of collecting over 30 million. We collected money from 37 different countries, from Argentina to Australia, from Iceland to Japan, and we distributed a record £38 million to our members, 4% more than last year. I'd also like to highlight that this means we collected and distributed more than £1 million for each member of staff at ALCS, a great achievement. Since ALCS started, we have now collected and distributed around £600 million of secondary royalty income to authors and their beneficiaries. Investment income was £0.8 million this year, which covered around 20% of our cost base. We use this income to defray our expenses, which helps to keep our commission rates as low as possible for the benefit of our existing members. At the end of March, the fair market value of our portfolio was £5.1 million more than the cost compared to just £0.5 million at the end of the previous year. If we now look at the trend of results over the last 15 years, The increases in the key figures clearly show the progress we have made over that period. Licence income has increased by 92% and royalties paid by 123%. Despite all the system improvements we have made and our membership more than doubling during that time, costs have been kept under control, rising by 98%. Indeed, cost per member have fallen by 35%. Moving on now to the Statement of Financial Position, this shows the company's assets and liabilities as at the 31st of March 2021. Our total assets increased by 17.7% to £51.2 million. The main elements of this are our investments and cash holdings. During the year, we completed our £5 million investment into a specific socially responsible investment fund, reducing the overall risk profile of our whole portfolio. All our investments are made using a medium to long-term horizon, with a view to maintaining the value of our assets in real terms and delivering an income which, as I mentioned earlier, is used to keep the commission rates down. Our creditors increased slightly during the year to 42.7 million, the vast majority of which is money due to writers, which has yet to be distributed. Due to the continued uncertainty of income caused by the pandemic and Brexit, the board decided to increase our reserves this year by just over £1 million to support the strategic aims of the company. Additionally, the unrealised surplus on our investments increased, meaning our total reserves stand at 7.9 million at the year end. I think you will agree that once again we have an excellent set of results, and I therefore commend these accounts to the members. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mark. We're just going to see if we've had any questions on the report and accounts while we've been presenting. I don't think we have we?
Just one, if you could explain fair market value, Mark. That'd be helpful.
Surely. Fair market value is the difference between the cost we paid for the share or the equity and the value it is currently trading at. So if you think of your house, when you bought your house all those years ago, hopefully, it's now increased in value, and what you would sell it for is the fair market value. And that's the difference.
Thanks, Mark. If there are no more questions on this agenda item, let's open the vote. The option to vote on this agenda item should now have appeared on your browser window, so please follow the instructions. Please be aware that you can change your mind on the vote, but the option that you've selected when I close the vote will be the option that is recorded. Your votes will be combined with the votes that we've received from members in advance. If you did vote in advance, I'm afraid you won't be able to vote as live now. Okay, so the voting is now open. Jolly good. We did have one question about the warnings we made last year at the AGM about a likely drop in income due to Brexit and the pandemic, and the fact that we went on actually to have a record year. Owen, would you like to speak about that?
Yep, sure. Thanks, Tony. Yes, I think if you recall last year, we were hearing some very worrying noises about falling UK and overseas income, and thankfully this didn't happen. I'd like to highlight just two events that actually had a very positive impact on the income and indeed the distributions we were able to make to our members last year. The first being a settlement of a court case in the Netherlands that resulted in a large backdated payment, and the second being the settlement of a tax dispute between the Italian CMO and its tax authorities. Again, that resulted in a large unbudgeted payment. Between the two of those, that was £5.5 million that we received, most of that unbudgeted, and that made a huge difference to the year.
Thanks, Owen. That's very interesting. I can see the votes are coming now. I can give you a little bit more time to get your votes in. And we don't have any other questions, do we?
Let me just check.
So where are we on that?
Yeah. So we've got just a few more votes to come in. Yeah.
Okay, so if you are intending to vote, it will be really good if you could vote very soon. I'm going to have to close the vote in a few seconds. Okay, I'm going to close the vote. Let's look at the figures. I can confirm that the ALCS 2020 to 2021 Directors Report and accounts have been adopted. Okay, moving on to agenda item 2, which is to receive and adopt the annual transparency report for 2020 to 2021. This is proposed by Faye Bird and seconded by Okechukwu Nzelu. I'm now going to pass this over to Barbara, who can introduce the item.
Thank you, Tony. In addition to the accounts, the AGM papers also included the ALCS Annual Transparency Report, which is a requirement of UK regulations that came into force 5 years ago, implementing the EU Collective Rights Management Directive. The regulations are fairly prescriptive, and in compiling this transparency report, we have tried to present information drawn from the financial statements and the annual report in a format that both fits with the regulations but, more importantly, conveys useful information to you, our members. To this end, we have worked with other organisations within the sector as well as the Intellectual Property Office. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. We're just going to see if we've had any questions on the annual transparency report coming in while we've been presenting.
We have one which is perhaps one for Mark. Mark, if you could take this. There's a member who doesn't see a comparison of the cost percentage of royalties received for previous years.
No, we don't. The transparency report refers to a single year. We talk about the cost percentage within the accounts each year, and that looks at 2 years. But historically, the commission we charged has been around 8.4 to 8.7%. Last year it was higher because we, as I mentioned in my report, took money to reserve, so it went up to 9.4. But that's all that appears in the transparency report.
Yeah, and I think to confirm, it has been very static over the past 3 to 4 years at around about 8.3, 8.4%. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mark and Owen. We should now open the voting on this item. As before, the option to vote on this agenda item should now have appeared on your browser window. So again, please follow the instructions. We did actually have another question about the annual transparency report, which picks up on the point Mark has just made about it only covering 1 year. One of the members has asked, would it not be more transparent and useful for members for the report to cover a number of years' worth of information so that trends can be spotted? Over to you on that one, Owen, I think.
Oh, thanks. Yep, although the transparency report only reports on 1 year, we do actually retain 5 years, as Barbara mentioned, so 5 years worth of reports on our website. We also actually make sure that those reports are in a uniform format so that actually trends and analysis can be actually undertaken. And you can see, for example, changes in licence income and in our membership and member activities. If members actually have any specific sort of queries on that, we're very happy to answer those and just get in touch, and I'm sure we can provide trend analysis and information on that as well. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Owen. I can see the votes coming in now. The wonders of modern technology we have on the laptop over here. It's great. Ticking over. We did have yet another question, actually, slightly different, not on the transparency report. One of the members wrote in to ask this. With writing usually being a solitary activity, when will ALCS hold meetings, social events, awards, etc. at a physical venue where writers can actually meet each other in person rather than online? I think that's for you, Barbara.
Thank you, Tony. Yes, we'd like to meet all our members too as soon as possible. We do know that writing can be a solitary activity, and so in usual times we like to hold events around the country to meet our members, but of course since the pandemic this has come to a resounding halt. We have, however, held focus groups and award ceremonies, and indeed the last AGM online, which allowed for more members to be involved than usual. However, we hope to resume business as usual next year in person regarding our events, pandemic allowing, obviously. So watch out for information either in your inbox or in our newsletter. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Barbara. I think we'd all definitely like to pick that one up again. Absolutely. So definitely watch this space, and we'll see if we can get some things organised. I can see that most of you have now cast your vote, so can I ask anyone who's intending to vote to do that as soon as possible. Give you a little bit of extra time, but I think I'm going to close the vote now. Looking at the figures, I can now confirm that the annual transparency report has been adopted. Thank you very much for that. Okay, we're moving on to agenda item 3, which is to appoint Messrs Shipley's LLP of 10 Orange Street, London, WC287DQ, as auditors of the company and to authorise the directors to fix their remuneration. This is proposed by Maggie G and seconded by James McConaughey. The third item of the formal proceedings regards the reappointment of the auditors, and it's your opportunity again to ask questions on this item, so do send any of your questions in. We have had some questions on this, haven't we, Owen?
Yeah, we had 2 questions that were sent in earlier. The first question is, with regards to magazines and academic journals, how many claims were submitted during the previous year, 2020-21, and how many of these were actually checked and audited? And related to that, how does the actual secondary use relate to claims submitted or payments made proportionately? And to answer that, we receive on average around about 50,000 article claims a year, I would say, certainly over the last 5 years. We check a set percentage of these. That percentage is reviewed by our board and actually set. But on top of that, we also check all high value claims. And in addition, we actually review a set percentage of all statements, and all high value statements as well are also checked. As to the second part of the question, as to how the payments relate to the data and the claims, we don't actually get information on which articles are actually copied within the sort of collective licensing scheme. But what we do receive is information on the publications that have been copied. And we use something called HESA classifications, which is the Higher Education Statistical Agency classifications, to match and group the fees for the copied publications against the actual claims that are actually made.
Okay, thanks, Owen. That's very interesting. It's a bit of a glimpse and insight into the very technical nature of some of the things. It is technical and complex.
It's
very technical, but that's the kind of thing that goes on here all the time. Okay, I can see that most people have cast their votes. I think we might have a couple of questions in. Is it on the annual transparency report itself, or?
Let's have a look.
There were a couple there, I think, weren't there?
How often do you tender for auditors? Perhaps, Mark, you could take that?
Surely. We tender every 3 years. We look at the performance of the auditors in the Finance and Audit Committee every 3 years. If the current firm are satisfactory, then we can extend that to 6 years. But after 6 years, that's the maximum we will have an audit firm in place, because we regard the change as quite valuable, getting new sets of eyes looking at things. So the initial appointment is for 3 years. If it's satisfactory, we can extend that to 6 years, but after 6 years, there's a mandatory change.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks. And the second question actually was related to that, asking why we do not go out to open tender. But just to confirm, we do an open tender for our auditors.
Okay, thank you. I think we've got all the votes in, actually, haven't we? I'll give a little bit more time.
Yeah, they're just coming through. Yeah.
If there's anybody else who is intending to vote, we don't have any other questions on this item. I'm going to close the voting fairly soon. Okay, I think I can close it now. Looking at the figures, I can confirm the appointment of Messrs Shipley's LLP as auditors for ALCS. Thank you very much for that. Moving on to agenda item 4, to consider and, if thought appropriate, to approve the recommendations of the Remuneration Committee regarding directors' fees for 2021 to 2022. This is proposed by Caroline Sanderson and seconded by Paul Farrelly. Okay, this item on the agenda is directors' fees for 21-22. The Remuneration Committee of the Board has recommended that the remuneration paid to directors for 21-22 should remain at the level set for 2021. The annual accounts and transparency report set out the level of payments made to directors during the 2020 to 2021 financial year. Just to see if we've had any questions in on that. Are there any questions?
There is just one question again related to the auditors, asking where in the cycle Shipley's are.
Surely. Shipley's have done 2 audits now, so this year was their 2nd year. So they'll do a 3rd year, then they'll be reviewed by the Finance and Audit Committee, and as I said earlier, if it's satisfactory, that term will be extended. But they're 2 years into the 3-year cycle.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any others?
No other questions.
Okay. I would just like to comment on this point and reassure our members that we routinely benchmark salaries for ALCS staff and similarly remuneration for the ALCS board to ensure that they are appropriately paid. We do believe that writers should be paid for the work that they do. We pay our contributors to ALCS News. We pay writers when we ask them to represent ALCS at events. And we believe that people who spend their valuable time on the ALCS board should be paid accordingly too. And I would like to say that they all work very, very hard indeed, both staff and board. Any more questions on that?
No more questions.
Votes are coming in. No more questions. Are we going to stop the vote now?
You've got to open the vote.
Oh, sorry. That's my fault. Yes, sorry. As there don't seem to be any questions on this item, let's open the vote. I should have opened the vote on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so the option to vote on this agenda item should now have appeared on your browser window, so please follow the instructions. Okay, you do get to vote on this.
And do we have one question to please tell the proposed directors' fees for the next year?
They remain, I think it's just over 10,000.
Yeah.
It is just over 10,000.
I think it's like 10,088.
Yeah. The board approved that the fees would not go up for the year, and they remained at the 2020-21 level, which was around about £10,000. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on that? We did have another question on a different point about the Advocacy Committee. What is the Advocacy Committee and who do they advocate for? So that's one for you, Bob.
Thank you, Tony. The Board Advocacy Working Party is made up of members of the ALCS board, executive, staff, and we also have input from consultants from the various political parties. This group reviews the current and potential issues and threats affecting writers and guides the executive's approach to its advocacy work as appropriate. Issues recently discussed include increasing the public lending right pot, as well as aspects of the EU Digital Single Market Directive that will be beneficial to writers if it were to be implemented in the UK. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Back to the voting. I can see that most people have voted.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting there. Give you a little bit more time on this one, as we don't have any more questions, I don't think. I'm going to have to close the voting fairly soon. I'm going to close the voting now. Thank you very much. I can confirm that the directors' fees have been approved at the same rate as set in 2020 to 2021. Agenda item 5 is to approve the appointment of Okechukwu Nzelu as director of the company in accordance with Article 35C of the company's Articles of Association. This is proposed by me, Tony Bradman, and seconded by Joanne Harris. The ALCS Articles of Association provide for directors of the company to be either elected by the members or appointed by the board, subject to an overarching requirement that a majority of board directors must be elected. The articles also require that new appointments made by the board are subject to the approval of the members at the following annual general meeting. This year, after a rigorous appointments process, the board appointed Okechukwu Nzelu as a director and is now asking for the approval of the members for this appointment. Just a little bit about Okechukwu. He is a Manchester-based writer and a lecturer in creative writing at Lancaster University. In 2015, he was the recipient of a Northern Writers Award from New Writing North, and in 2020, his debut novel, The Private Joys of Nena Maloney, won a Betty Trask Award and was also shortlisted for the Desmond Elliott Prize and the Polari First Book Prize. So I'd like to open the voting on this item. As before, the option to vote on this agenda item should now have appeared on your browser window, so please follow the instructions. We haven't got any specific questions on that, but we do have another question.
We have one that's related not to this appointment, but to directors in general. And the question is about how many hours on average per year do the various categories of directors engage in work at ALCS?
That's very hard to say. We have 5 board meetings a year, and that's a pretty a big commitment because there's a lot of papers to be read. I think papers can take hours to read. They're very technical, very specific. We also have subcommittees. There's a finance audit committee, a distribution and membership committee, both of which are highly technical and need a lot of understanding, context, a lot of papers for those. We have nominations committee, a remuneration committee, all of which directors serve on, and we move directors around. So it is a pretty big commitment. During the year as well, we have other things. We have strategy day. We just had a strategy day, which is an all-day away day where we had papers and debate about where we think the company should go in future. And overall, I think it's certainly a couple of days a month, probably a bit more than that. And I think for directors who do come on the board, they find that I was saying to OK yesterday that the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. So there's an awful lot of commitment. There's a lot of emails backwards and forwards, a lot of consultations. We do actually occasionally have things decided by email as well. So it is a big commitment for the directors on the board. We do have another question about the board, actually.
Let's open the voting now.
Oh, sorry, yes. We're going to open the voting on that one. I think we did that. We already did that. Okay. Yeah. So the votes are coming in. But we had another board-related question, actually. Do you publish your board meeting minutes and papers anywhere for members to read? Owen on that one, I think.
Thank you. No, we don't publish the papers. They are technical, and there are obviously various commercial sensitivities around what's discussed within board meetings. And we want to ensure that actually board members can talk as frankly as possible within those meetings. What we do is we share information with all our members on our website and through ALCS News. It's a great read, so I do encourage all members to sign up and actually get ALCS News. And if there are any changes, we'll report through that.
Okay, there's another question come up there.
We do. We have one question. Why does the board think that it needs the addition of OK to our board?
Well, we have a set number of directors on the board. We have 9 directors, and the majority of them are elected. We have 5 elected directors, I think, isn't it? 5 elected. And then we can have, and I'm a director, so I'm chair, and we can have 3 co-opted directors as well. Directors sit on the board for a term of 3 years, and are then can stand again to be elected for a second term of 3 years. Co-opted directors can be reappointed after their first term of 3 years if we think they're up to it and they're good. So inevitably in any period we have directors coming to the end of their terms. So this year we did have directors who had to stand for re-election. We also had a previously co-opted director called Michael Redpath, who was a very, very good director. He stood down. He had other things he wanted to do. And he moved on. So we then had a vacancy for a co-opted director, and we went through a rigorous selection process, which involved really looking for people who could stand for the position, interviews, shortlisting interviews, and got through the process and was the person we selected for that job. And we're very, very happy to have him. I think he'd be a real asset to the board.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I know the board wants to ensure that actually we have as diverse a sort of representation as possible. And actually, as a lecturer at Lancaster University, one of our largest sources of income is through higher education. And it's great to have someone with expertise and skills in that area.
Very much so. Okay, back to the voting. I can see that most people have cast their vote. So can I ask the remaining people to vote if you intend to? I think we're pretty much there, aren't we?
Yep, we have just one more general question.
Okay.
Once the AGM becomes live, will there still be an online facility for those who are unable to attend in person? Maybe Barbara, one for you.
I think that, we've said that we'll get back to everybody. I don't know, are we going to be putting the video on the website?
Yeah.
So.
But in future AGMs, if we can do... Yeah, I think in future AGMs, if we can actually have the opportunity for people around the country and indeed around the world to attend, we think that'd be a great thing.
No, I would definitely hope so. I think things have changed. I think we're all getting used to hybrid meetings where people can It's one of the good things, if one of the only good things that have come out of it, that we're a bit more relaxed about that kind of thing, and it does open it. It is more inclusive. So I think inclusion is very important value here at ALCS. So I think you can probably count on that.
That's great.
So, okay, I think I'm going to close the voting now. And looking at the figures, I can confirm the appointment of Okechukwu Nzelu as director of the company. Thank you very much. That concludes the formal business of the meeting. So now on to the announcement of the successful candidates from the recent board election. I'd first of all like to thank all the members who put themselves forward for election and the members who took the time to vote. ALCS is run by writers for writers, and it's really important that you have your say in the running of the organisation. So a big thank you to those who did. I'm pleased to announce that the successful candidates in the 3 advertised posts were General Post, Joanne Harris; first of the 2 AV posts, Diane Redmond; second of the 2 AV posts, Helen Blakeman. I'm sure you'll join me in wishing them well for their forthcoming tenure in position, and for anyone who would like to see the voting within the election, this will be made available on the ALCS website in the coming days. Okay, have we got any other questions come in?
Not so far.
You don't have anything else? No? Good. Okay, so I think we're going to finish the AGM at that point. But before I do, I would like to just take a moment to acknowledge and thank the ALCS staff for their hard work in ensuring members continue to be paid, and also to thank all my fellow board directors for their support and endeavours over the past year. I'd like to make a particular thank you to Maggie G, who's just finished her second 3-year term and has now stepped down, which is why we had an election to fill her post. Maggie has been a really hard-working director for the last 6 years for ALCS, and she will be missed. Finally, a huge thank you to all of you who have joined us online. We hope to see you in person again soon.